Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Firewall, the business bycast, where tech meets business. Get expert insights and real-world business leaders, IT experts, and the latest trends in bite-sized episodes. Stay ahead and explore what's beyond the firewall. And welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Firewall, where we talk about more than just technology. We bring business leaders and other business conversations to the forefront. And today I have a very special guest, Crystal Gans. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Crystal Gans. I am the founder of Mind Our Music, which is an artist management and development company, and spent 19 years in media, predominantly in media leadership until very recently.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. And when you say the media, like, can you expand on that a little bit about music, what you and the production side? What do you do in that space, or what have you done?
Absolutely. I might give you a little long-winded answer, but we'll see. I went to school for music business. I've always been very passionate about music. Was a classically trained pianist, played clarinet and marching band. But from a very young age, I always told my parents, we would watch the Grammys and I'd say, I want to do that. And they'd be like, you want to be a performer? I'm like, absolutely not. I had such stage fright, but I always knew I wanted to be behind the scenes. So, as a teenager, I would help friends that were in bands. I would, as social media was taking off back when it was, the MySpace days and then Facebook, I'm really aging myself. I would, walk them through the importance of those channels to put themselves out there because I would just watch them spend so much money producing and recording and releasing this music and then with no real business acumen. So I always knew I wanted to be behind the scenes. And I started Mind Our Music officially in 2020, but I've really been helping artists, throughout. So I went to school for music business, artist management, and marketing was something that with me, and I wound up working for my favorite radio station, which was a rock station in South Florida that is long since gone, but it was called 93 Rock in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. And I wound up being on the advertising and marketing side. So actually, I spent 19 years in media advertising, business development. So I would coach salespeople on how to sell audio strategies, which of course evolved into the digital space and podcasts. And so media sales is really where I spent the majority of my career.
Wow, congratulations on that journey. It sounds incredible, and you know, being part of that age bracket of dating myself as well, I remember some of that technology. And I remember watching the first episode of MTV, when my life changed forever watching, video killed the radio star, and we now know that that era has also come to an end recently where MTV is shut down and there are no more video streaming, call it TV sites. It's now all on social media type of content. I think YouTube and Spotify have now taken over that trophy or whatever you want to call it, that that monument. And it's crazy to think about how the evolution of, a music and media and content has evolved in the last 40 years. It's just incredible to see that evolution, and it just keeps on evolving more and more rapidly.
Yes,
So
it does.
yeah, it's interesting. And you said your radio station has gone bye bye, and I think 10 or 15 years ago in Toronto, we saw sort of the consolidation of the brands where now two, three companies owned 80% of the radio stations in Canada. And then obviously they shut them down to consolidate from productivity and efficiency and marketability. So it's an interesting journey, and I'd love to see what's going to happen with some of them, because obviously we hope that that industry is going to survive, and we all love music. So it's got to be some sort of delivery method there. But so you mentioned that a couple of years ago you started this Mind on Music. What led you to start this new kind of journey, venture, opportunity? What led to that?
Yeah, so I was always helping artists on the side. I would always help friends. I would, liken it to, well, you wouldn't just, they forget about the word business in music business. They would always focus on the music, but then forget that, it's not the if you build it, they will come. So it started off very much from, making sure they had a website or social media presence or just walking them through, teaching them about marketing. And what led me to what company was actually my first official client, Kalen Chase, an amazing vocalist, singer songwriter. He was the front man for a heavy metal band with I can't talk today, Joey Jordison from Slipknot. The band's called Vimic. So at the time, Vimic was kind of on hiatus. Kalen was trying to decide if he wanted to start his solo singer songwriter thing. And around the same time, an artist manager friend of mine kind of came back into my life that I had lost touch with. And we got to talking, and he also was like, "God, this is something you're so passionate about. You should do this for real." And so around that time was January 2020, really good timing, was when I decided to officially start my LLC, Mind Our Music. And it was quickly pointed out to me that they did not realize I was doing at the time. So I don't have kids, but Mind Our Music, mom. And I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense because the bands and the artists pretty much become my kids. So here we are. But really it was former artist manager coming back into my life and showing that kind of validation or belief that I could do what he had been doing for 30 years. And then truthfully, there were a lot of things that I saw him and other managers do in this space that I felt should evolve or be done differently. And that was one of my reasons for starting the company officially.
Very cool. Yeah, and so it's not just your typical promoting type of company. You're doing more mentorship, leadership. You're sort of pivoting a little bit to a different element. Can you define sort of like your three pillars of what you focus on exactly to the audience out there?
Yeah, truly, it's true artist management and development. So, I would say, kind of, I've in the past or over the course of the last 6 years, I've really had two pillars, and one is artist development for newer artists who are very green to the space, really, really just getting started. And if you look at a standard artist management business model, that's typically a commission based situation. Well, there's no commission to be had for an artist who needs a lot of help and has no numbers or maybe hasn't released anything yet or doesn't even know where to start. So the artist development bucket is kind of one area of focus where I would help some, up and coming artists on a more of on a retainer basis and do a lot more of that coaching and developing and teaching them about the industry and getting them started. And do kind of like a maybe a 6 to 12 month program, and then the other bucket, which is really where I focus all of my time now, is the actual artist management, which is so much. So a true, artist management looks a lot of different ways. There's no one size fits all approach, depending on the size of the artist and the size of your team. And ultimately, the artist manager is the kind of spearhead for building that team around the artist and scaling that team and the artist as needed, right? So if an artist is just starting to nationally tour and but maybe doesn't quite have the budget, if it's self-funded, if this is not an artist that has a whole label team, then you're talking about that artist manager responsibilities might also cover, I might be wearing the hat of artist manager, tour manager, social media manager, merch manager, I mean, you name it, business manager. So a lot of different hats until you start kind of filling those roles as the band builds and can justify the expenses.
Wow. Wow. So there's a very distinct difference between the two, the starving artist slash the call it the startup mode of any business, right? You've got to invest into capital, getting all the infrastructure systems and processes in place. And then here you're now helping coordinate getting them out and launching them off to a great start. So that's amazing. And congratulations to your success there. And taking the plunge and leaving the corporate world, that you're now one of many people we've had on our show that have really started to pivot into this new venture of entrepreneurship and really following some of their lifelong dreams. So kudos to you to taking the plunge.
Thank you. Yeah, I spent a lot of the last 25-ish years or so following my favorite bands and going to a lot of Pearl Jam concerts and Dave Matthews Band concerts and realizing that I was really vicariously living through that to find my fulfillment, and not that I wasn't enjoying. I had a wonderful and am very grateful and lucky to have left on my own terms. Wouldn't change that for the world. However, I was chasing that like biggest piece of fulfillment through going to these concerts. And meanwhile, I would be at these shows. And yes, I, do love the artists and the shows themselves, but I would constantly be wanting to be backstage, right? I always
Right.
wanted to be like, okay, I want to be able to bring this experience to people like me who have healed through music for years. So now it is a very rewarding experience to be doing that on a slightly smaller scale right now. But to know that I'm doing that for other people is not just for the bands that I'm helping their dreams come true, but also being a part of putting on experiences that I see fans just having, crying in the audience and or forgetting about their problems for 2 hours or 3 hours, right? Or there's no divisiveness at the concert, right? It's everybody is enjoying something that they all love for 2 or 3 hours and they're hopefully not thinking about their financial issues or work issues or relationship issues. They're just there to be in the moment and, listen to the music that maybe got them through some of those challenges.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's incredible having that. And I think music really impacts a lot of people, even though they take it for granted. I actually went to see I can't say Broadway, but I went to see a theater production this weekend. It was the Neil Diamond story
Oh, yeah.
and, listening to his journey and everything like that. And it was just incredible listening to those songs again. And, the one that everybody loves, even doesn't matter how old you are, from 5 years old and you go to camp today, all the way to my parents' age, which is, Sweet Caroline, like everybody knows the song. And obviously they played it in the play and the entire theater, people were standing singing it,
Yeah.
in a theater of, stage theater. So it's not even a concert, but yet, when the song came on, everybody got into the song and it was awesome. And selfishly, I think I mentioned it, I think we're due for another alternative generation of rock. So, if you can find some way to bring that back, another Soundgarden, another Pearl Jam, another Link Biscuit, Rage Against the Machine, please bring that to the surface again, because that genre has not really surfaced in a while, and I would love to see the next gen of those bands on the stage again, because that was an incredible era of music. So these alternative was, I think, one of the greatest eras of rock post the 70s. Obviously, that
So
was
I
a
will
whole
tell you
different.
what most people don't know unless you're, in radio or pay attention to certain evolutions. The reason, in my opinion, the reason why those rock formats took quite the hit is because radio is still the most effective music discovery or music amplification tool, right? People, it's still free, it's still in cars. It's, if you're talking about companies like iHeart, they've done a great job. And I'm not just saying this because I worked there for 5 years, but they did a great job with the, branding the iHeartRadio app. So even now with smart dashboards and, the integration, but what most people don't realize, and I saw this firsthand when my favorite rock station, had to flip formats. It's at the end of the day, it's all about ratings and revenue. The way in which the ratings were measured changed in 2010, I want to say, in a lot of markets. So in the top 50 or so markets, measurement changed from the old diaries. I don't know if you've ever gotten like a Nielsen diary or a where you get a piece of mail and they'd give you like $1 or $5 or $10. I forget what it is more current because they still send them for certain markets and for TV. But you take a survey and you would say, oh, yeah, this is my favorite radio station. This is my favorite, I listen to it 24 hours a day. Like people could write in whatever they wanted, so it wasn't super accurate because if you're saying if you're listening 24 hours a day, no, at some point you're sleeping and you're probably not listening to that station, but it showed loyalty or it showed favoritism for the stations that they actually were passionate about. When the measurement changed to PPM, personal people meters in 2010, it was like at the time, it's a very different now, but at the time it was like people would have a little like pager, right? Like a little device that they would put on their body somewhere. And then at night, they would put it on a docking station and it would upload data into like the cloud to say, this is what you were actually exposed to. And that effectively killed the rock format. Because if you think about it, if you're walking around with a device that is listening to what you're actually exposed to, they're not playing rock stations in the grocery store or in the dentist office or in your business office. everything at that point in 2010, you probably saw a shift where a lot of rock formats and other formats too definitely took a beating, but a lot of the rock genre flipped to top 40 and adult contemporary, and almost every station flipped to some form of easy listening because that's the passive listening. And by no knock to those genres, but those are the safe, passive listening experiences that you would have in office buildings and supermarkets. Yeah.
Which is where we spend most of our day at office, and you don't want to be listening to rock and roll while you're waiting in the reception of a dental
Right. So
office
when
or
the
in your
ratings took a
elevator.
hit, when the way to measure ratings changed and the ratings took a hit, the revenue tanked with it. And so that's why you saw a lot of formats flip because they had to flip something that got ratings. But what you didn't see was those rock stations would be able to sell out shows left and right because it was a passionate, loyal audience that was choosing to listen on their
Yes.
terms.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I still listen to it, and it's. I hope they bring it back because the that side of creative artistry is always amazed me in the sense of the vocals and the drums and the
And I
whole.
think now it's just, the evolution is now that music discovery is happening in so many different places. So while
Yeah.
radio is still the most mass reach, obviously now with TikTok and YouTube and Instagram but predominantly really TikTok, the music discovery and the trending sounds and such that you can look at it. And I'm sure this is something you were probably going to ask me later, but you can look at it in a number of ways. It is a land of opportunity where anybody's music can be discovered, and it's also can be very overwhelming because it is so saturated or oversaturated with so many songs and sounds that how do you break through the clutter of it all?
Yeah, well, that leads me to one of my questions that I actually did have, which is, what is the biggest structural changes happening right now in the music industry?
Definitely AI. So, I mean, there are, and I think by the time I even say this stat, it changes by the time this podcast comes out, right? So I want to say it's something like 30 to 50,000 songs a day are uploaded to DSPs, to the streaming platforms. And I forget the percentage right now of, I want to say at least 20 to 30,000 of those are AI generated. So that is the biggest change, right? There were always tens of thousands of songs being uploaded. Now it is exceptionally, a compound effect, right? It is anybody can go and make a song utilizing AI and release it. And that has been the biggest change that is very actively currently happening. And I know, AI in general in every industry is being heavily discussed. But yes, that's the biggest change.
Wow. And you touched on this a little bit ago there. So you're saying that, you know, artists today are more empowered than ever before in the sense they can upload all this data. They've got the social media platforms and everything. But I think that they're also more vulnerable than they were 10 years ago. How is that impacting the industry as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different answers to that. So I think they're more vulnerable than ever for a number of reasons, like the ability to steal their likeness in so many ways, right? Both visually and audibly. That nobody is really I don't feel like anybody is really safe from that. You see deep fakes and such all the time. So that's a vulnerable spot. The other vulnerability or frustrating spot is, in the last 10 years, I would say, 10 years ago, we still had an attention span to, watch something for 30 seconds or a minute, right? Now it's if you don't capture, and this is like the golden rule in social media now, if you don't capture them in 3 seconds, they're gone. 3 seconds. Because we are so trained as a society to doom scroll, right? We are just scrolling. And if something doesn't catch our attention in the first 3 seconds, it's gone forever. And it teaches the algorithm we never want to see something like that again because it didn't capture us in 3 seconds. It's pretty impossible to capture anybody's attention in 3 seconds with any topic, let alone a song. Like you have to, so that part is tough to figure out, how do you break it? And that's where you see a lot of artists come under fire for, you know, eh, rage or not rage baiting, clickbaiting, right? So like clickbaiting or deceptive hooks. Or I saw one the other day that was brilliant, and of course it went viral. But it was somebody that said, "I can't believe Noah Khan stole my song," and that was the text. So of course it makes you go, "Well, wait a minute," and you unmute it, and you listen and he's like, here's my song, or no, here's the song, and it's playing Noah Khan's song for the first like 20 seconds. And of course you're waiting to be like, oh, okay, what song did Noah Khan steal from this guy? And the back half of it is some like heavy metal, death metal, crazy that is very clearly not Noah Khan stole this song. But
Right.
he utilized that to get people to stay and watch and discover him. And it was the comedic value. And but that is kind of part of what you have to do now. Not to mention that from an AI perspective, not only are the AI songs being uploaded and released like crazy and saturating the streams. And so you could see that as not that artists are making much from royalties. I'm sure or you've read plenty about that. It's like 4 thousandths of a penny per stream or whatever. So they're not making a bunch of money on royalties, but all of a sudden, if you have tens of thousands of AI generated songs bombarding the DSPs, it is taking that slice of the pie away from actual human artists. So that's the other piece of it. But then, in addition to that, which all sounds like very doom and gloom when I say it this way, but in addition to that, then there's the ability to make all these AI videos that are then promoting that song. So it's all the more difficult because all of a sudden you have 200 clips on TikTok promoting a song that are all AI generated video clips with fake people lip syncing or reviewing the songs. And then, and AI generated lyric videos and what have you, plus the song itself is AI. And it's getting harder and harder to tell what's AI and what's not.
Yeah, and that's an interesting kind of, call it, convergence of conversation is, you know, when is, a celebrity or famous singer, let's say a Celine Dion or somebody else out there, Mariah Carey, using AI to basically generate their next new hit and basically have just the artist and the technology. Now you're circumventing autocorrect, you're circumventing all the additional elements of it and basically having an artist working with technology to generate that. Do you see that even becoming the next sort of evolution of, recording and artist creativity?
Yeah, I mean, and so I am very much on the side of anti AI, and the band that I predominantly represent is also very anti generative AI. But if I'm really like trying to pull myself back for a second and say, okay, what are like kind of the pros and the cons, and how do I see this being utilized, and is there like a happy medium? I think what people will and have started doing and might start doing, even if they're in the anti space right now, is look, AI came into existence in you know pop culture and everyday lives because it saves time, right? You look at people using, Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, it's to save time. So looking at it from that perspective, the I could see where those big name artists, if they really wanted to still have the artistic integrity to play the real instruments, but are they going to utilize AI to save the amount of time that it could have taken in the pre-production stage to build out the song? That I think we're going to see more and more of how has AI assisted them in bringing what was living in their head to life in a demo, but then utilize real instruments to bring it to life. I think we're going to probably see more and more of that. Um, and it's a big gray area because then there's the fully AI generated songs where it's not a real instrument is ever picked up, and it's somebody with zero musical talent or ability that just types in a prompt and spits out a song. That's a tough one because that's all just learning from other real artists. So then you start talking about, copyright protection and infringement, and the days of artists that don't have a lot of money, majority of independent artists, they don't formally copyright their songs because it adds up. Because I forget how much it is per song, but let's just say it's a couple $100 per song. That is significant to go and copyright every single song that you have or to trademark your band and such, which you should do. But those are all things that now people are really should do to further protect themselves. Because yes, you have a poor man's copyright when you release a song, when you record a song, really. But it's arguably that's just not going to be enough anymore.
Yeah, it's an interesting, thought process around that. And originally, as part of your answer there, I was going to ask, like, you know, where do artists really start defining their lines on being a purist? Call it a purist because, that's already becoming a big conversation in the movie industry where, guys' muscles and, with all the touch ups and the, graphical CGI effects on everybody, like looking at Marvel, nothing was really done. Like it's just all CGI. 80% of that is all special effects with computers. Where are we at with music? Are we going to see a purist line where people hold to their, call it, original talent versus using technology? And where does that kind of go into it? Where do you see the future in that?
Yeah, I think you're gonna have artists that, so the band that I manage, Rains, Raynes, Rains is a very organic approach to everything. They've always been an organic approach to everything. All of their album artwork is all hand drawn. Everything is real instrumentation. So they are really arguably always going to be purists and get increasingly frustrated that some of the tools that they utilize in production now almost like default to an AI assisted, you know, suggestion that they actually have to turn off, right? So I think you are going to have a lot of purists that will stick to, no, this is the way that I've done it, and I, want to be true to the art form. And then I think you're going to have a lot of people that start shifting into a little bit of the middle ground where they utilize it as an assistant to save time in certain ways. But I think, I mean, when I tell you the amount of people that commented, so we started putting stickers on the vinyl that if you buy a Rains vinyl, there's a sticker on it that says, you're going to have to edit this while I look this up really quick.
Love to see what this says.
So we started putting a sticker on every single vinyl that says, every sound you hear on this record is an intentional choice made by a human being. Generative artificial intelligence will never be used in the creation of any Rains product. And it's black and white and it looks like a parental advisory sticker,
Oh, I love that.
kind of by design. Like this is a very important, not a warning, but a pledge.
Yeah, that's smart because I remember when I was a kid, they would do that for, call it, certain bands on profanity and stuff like that because they actually mentioned it that they were extremely explicit lyrics and stuff like that. And I think it's very smart. It's almost like GMO and non-GMO labels, like AI and non-AI labels. So
Yeah, and I mean Spotify, right? Like literally 4 days ago, I want to say, Spotify introduced the verified by Spotify badge. So that's a like a light green check mark to distinguish human artists from AI generated content. So they're starting to take actions to identify at least what is real or what is human and what is not. But yeah, it's interesting.
yeah, and I think even if you look at social media, there's been a number of times where artists are being called out for lip syncing and being at a concert, not actually singing any of it. And then, it gets out of whack. And next thing you know, the artist is like, oh, busted. So I think a lot of,
Autotune, that's a big one with autotune and Melodyne. And the most popular, the most quasi viral video that Reigns has had on TikTok to date and Instagram for that matter is a video of just Mark, the lead singer, in a car harmonizing with a musical theater song, harmonizing with From Now On from The Greatest Showman. And
yeah.
and then the other one, it actually both did pretty well. The other one was the trend with Wide Awake by Katy Perry, and he's harmonizing to that, but just in a car, no microphone, no auto tune, no Melodyne, his natural voice. I think even in Wide Awake, there's a part where his voice doesn't crack, but like again, it's real. The reason those two videos went off and every single comment is very positive, almost every single comment is, oh, thank God somebody finally did it like for real. Like no auto tune, no Melodyne, no microphone effects, just
Mhm.
a raw voice. Like, can we just have raw, real? I want to know something's real. And people are craving something real.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I fully agree with you on that. I'm going to mention it out there on this podcast and I want to see unplugged sessions already. I want it back.
Yeah.
I remember watching Kurt Cobain at MTV and like doing an unplugged session. And then all the other bands were starting to do unplugged sessions, just acoustics, no, nothing, no special effects, nothing. And it was just the artist in itself. And just to listen to that, their voices was just so special.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, that's, I think, the area where artists, I think, should put their focus in trying to break through and stand out. And especially as more and more, just knowing that the vast majority of humans do not want AI in their lives. Not talking about like administrative AI, assistants or AI agents that, can help you with an Excel. That's a little different, but the vast majority of people do not want AI in their lives. They're sick of not knowing if what they're seeing is real. So I think you'll see that more and more come to light in live music, right? People want to see you, meet you, have experiences with you, and know that you're real and they want to feel seen. So, the meet and greet experiences at shows, they want accessibility. That
yeah.
was something that, started happening in COVID, that all of a sudden people felt like, "Oh, my favorite artist, I feel so close to them now, and I feel like they're accessible because I'm seeing them in their house playing guitar or whatever during lockdown." That has not gone away. If anything, that has intensified over the years, especially with AI. People crave that realness even more. So show who you really are on social, show the human elements. Lip syncs, it is what it is. You have to do some lip syncs here and there to promote songs on social media because that's, visually, it's just the easiest way to get people to hear the sound and hopefully go listen to the song. But making sure that you're also like live performing it and doing, various, lo-fi versions or showing behind the song, showing the actual live experience and people and how they react to those songs live in the crowd so that you create that kind of FOMO of, oh yeah, no, I want to go experience something real again.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I still enjoy going to those experiences. I mentioned I even just went to, live performance for from a theater perspective, not a concert this weekend. And there is something to be said about, experiencing it, 30, 50, 100 feet away from the actual artist singing and, and actually moving on stage and getting you all into that experience. It's just something you can't do exclusively on, radio or on a YouTube video or whatever other format media. So, yeah, I think that that's a big one that artists will need to, perfect and evolve. And we don't have Michael Jackson right now perfecting every move out there, but he was a perfectionist when it comes to that. So, we talk about AI and we know it's not going away. Like I tell everybody, like we have to embrace it in one way, shape, or another. And obviously we're gonna have our purists that want to have that, be it a symphony, be it, band, be it whatever it is, an artist singing or performing. But then there is going to be this carved experience that people will eventually, call it create and adopt and will be defined as, creative music in a different, you know, call it genre or different kind of vertical. How do you see business models kind of differentiating that? And, you know, will AI make it that, the music industry now is going to have more opportunity both financially and business wise? Like, do you see new things happening there that didn't exist before?
I mean, that's it's a great question because I mean, I think we see all the signs of everybody obviously trying to figure it out and figure out how to monetize it and figure out how to identify it. And so you see, Warner Music Group, acquiring or partnering with, I forget if it was Suno or, I should know these things, but either way, you see these massive corporations acquiring AI companies and trying to figure it out, right? And part of that, one would hope, is to protect their own artists and songwriters, but part of that is also just they're looking to figure out how to monetize it because it's not going away. I think that, if we could figure out a way that, for the artists who are open to, and I'm not saying I personally agree with this, but for the artists that are open to like, oh, they don't care if AI learns their likeness or vocal style or songwriting style, so long as they're getting paid or credited for it, then that's an opportunity for artists to have a separate sort of income, similar to how sampling has always worked, right? If you sample a piece of somebody else's song, you credit them, you get, they get paid for the utilization of that sample in the song. The part with AI that happens so quickly is that there's so many songs out there that arguably are just stealing from other people's work and styles and vocals and you name it, and nobody's getting credit for it. And it's just, being released faster than anybody can catch it. So I think I think there is an opportunity to monetize that for artists, but I think we just need to figure out how to, catch it and protect the songwriters and artists first and foremost so that the AI artists and wherever it's learning from get some sort of credit. I mean, that's not really the answer probably that you're looking for, but I do think there's an opportunity for artists to figure out how to monetize utilizing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not, I'm looking for insight. At the end of the day, the way I see it, and this is really going to date me, you know, when Napster came out, if everybody who's on this, listening to this remembers Napster, there's a movie on it. It was that famous. Like it completely disrupted the entire music industry for like almost a decade, where you literally went to Napster and downloaded your album within minutes and you never paid anybody for it. And they were able to circumvent all of the security and privacy, and sales went down and people were freaking out, and who was getting credit, how we're getting paid. And then guess what? Apple came out with the Apple Store and started selling music on their iPod. And that was sort of the beginning of licensed modifications of not having to go to the record store and buy an entire album and spend 20, 30 bucks on an album that you wanted one song. Now I can buy one song for $5 or whatever the cost was at the time. It was a premium to buy the one song versus the whole album. So we look at that. We're in this sort of next shift of like a Napster shift, and yeah, long from the days of when I was a kid, where I had to put a cassette in a machine to listen and wait for my radio guy to play my favorite song so I can record it and hopefully get my mixtape from my high school days. Today you got to
Yeah.
be the right era to talk about a mixtape, but we're in an interesting time.
And it's tough because you try to look at it from all sides, right? Because, and I know the film industry is, and the industries outside of creative too are also trying to figure it out and go through it because there are areas. I think you and I were talking the other day about the film that is being released with, oh man, who's the actor that we were just talking about the
Val
other day?
Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. That Val Kilmer obviously has passed away, and they're utilizing all like AI to have Val Kilmer in this role. It's interesting because the side of it that we're not talking about or that we haven't talked about yet that is also a big part of the conversation is, these I'm not going to talk about the big production houses that clearly do have the budgets to hire real musicians and real actors. And so I'll talk more about the indie space. So, independent filmmakers and could see where if you're telling me that I now have the ability to utilize AI to create the score for my small film and pay $500 as opposed to $5,000 or $15,000 or $50,000 for music, depending on who you're trying to source it from, I get why people are going to choose AI.
Mhm.
Like, I understand where the creators are like, and they're honestly in a pretty difficult position because I bet you that at their core, they don't want to do that. They want to pay creators like them for their skill,
Mhm.
but I can see where people are like, man, if I can put that $1,000 that I would have been spending for, a musician to advertise this short film more or whatever, like those are difficult decisions to make when you're sitting on that side of it. And same thing with small business owners, right? If you all of a sudden don't have to license a song for X thousands of dollars and you can have AI make a song that sounds similar and gets the same point across for your commercial for your small business, I understand why people are doing it. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but at what point do we then literally make musicians obsolete because then that was a significant chunk of income for a lot of artists getting sync placements in TV and film commercials, you name it. So I would say kind of twofold on that. Like I understand why it's happening. That goes back to if you're a real human artist and musician, all the more reason why you need to connect with people beyond, I hate to say it, but beyond the music that you're putting out. You need to connect with people on a human element and have them fall in love with you as a person and have them feel seen by you and want to know you and want to care about you enough to buy your merch or to, like, you have to start thinking about other ways to make a living because I do think that a lot of those sources of income, they're already being heavily impacted. And I think that that's not going to change. So how do you change, get out there and play live more? create a connection with fans. We have a Discord community for Reigns. It's like 1,400 people strong that would do anything that we ask of them because they just genuinely love these guys. So they are become our brand ambassadors. And for a band of the size that it is, just playing pretty much small clubs, small theaters at the moment because they've only been touring properly for a little over a year, but to be selling the kind of merch that they're selling speaks volumes because people genuinely love them and want to support them, and they're willing to spend $35 for a t-shirt or $35 for a vinyl. So I guess that's the part that, if I were to instill any kind of advice to an aspiring artist, it's, put ego aside, put the walls down. Gone are the days of like, don't try to be this mysterious artist that's inaccessible, the way that a lot of our artists, celebrities grew up. It doesn't mean that your privacy's gone, but people want to feel seen and connected to you on a real level.
Yeah, and I see that. I can see that. That's part of the whole, differentiating factor. Because at the end of the day, you can't touch, you can't feel any of the AI generated products, and you can't really relate. And some of the aspects of musicians and artists is relating to their journey or to their perspective or to their outlook on life and so on and so forth. And with technology using that as a form of creativity, there is no association. It's completely service based. And one of the things I was going to actually mention that kind of was stirring in my head was I can appreciate the fact that, independent production company or a smaller business can't afford to hire, somebody to create a score or some sort of, music for their business or for their new production. But we also have an interesting opportunity like never before. So we look at, composers, musicians, where we can almost now create some sort of legacy data dump, you know, um, and some of these incredible artists that have created scores for all of our movies and stuff like that. AI now can, you know, take all that, learn that person's writing style, creativity style, the Star Wars, the Star Trek, the different, major movie writers that have done all these amazing, talented, scores. And now we can say, okay, they've now passed, or, we're talking like a Val Kilmer. We can upload now Val's entire acting portfolio and all of his creativity styles and say, I need him for this. Can he step in and do it? If the family can figure out, or the licensing aspect of it can be figured out in a sense of royalties or likenesses or whatever, not, now I see an opportunity for the company to say, you know what, I will pay the estate to have this artist, the AI version of this artist, generate a 30-second, jingle for me, and maybe Frank Sinatra singing, my jingle, and I'll pay X number of dollars for that jingle. And I have something that I can never pull because Frank's been gone for many years and, his writing style is no longer there. So I think it is an interesting time that we can actually, harvest some of that. And there is a different angle to resurfacing and figuring out how to make a business out of that, for in good ways, obviously. But I think there's a
Yeah.
really good flip side to that perspective.
Yeah, no, and there's same thing from a visual standpoint. There are people that I know who have lost people unexpectedly or a long time ago, and that don't have videos of their lost relatives and such, and they're utilizing AI to bring photos back to life and such, and they love it because it provides some sort of healing or grief process for them. So it's an interesting, that's all I can say is like it's a really interesting time to try to figure all that out.
Yeah, no, it's truly in typical way technology brings forth everything. People hold on to what they know, and what they want to hold on to is cherished memories. And then there's the other side of the spectrum, which is, there's this opportunity of greatness. And obviously there's always going to be a pool of people that will, I'm going to say ruin it, but use it for the ill intended purposes of of why, there's a potential of greatness. So looking back and kind of figuring out our next steps here, what do you see happening over the next couple of years as this takes hold in the industry? What do you see evolving for both the labels and the label companies and the streaming networks like Spotify and iHeartRadio? And what do you see as happening in the sense of this whole do you have any predictions of where this is all going to land?
No, I mean, honestly, using iHeart as an example, so iHeart, every single employee at iHeart in their email signature, it says guaranteed human. And that stemmed from a research report that iHeart did. And as you know, iHeart CEO is Bob Pittman, who founded MTV. Um, so he's always been very forward thinking and innovative, and he made the change from Clear Channel to iHeartRadio. So we did that research, or they did that research study last year that said like 80% of people utilize AI, but or yeah, I forget what the percentages were, but it was a vast, overwhelming sense of most people do not want generative AI in their lives and they're sick of not knowing what's real. So that's where we mandated that everybody's signature says guaranteed human. And every time you listen to an iHeart station, you'll hear the 100, the guaranteed human tags, taking that stance that all of the radio hosts and podcast hosts, et cetera, are guaranteed to be human. Now, stepping outside of that, if there is another research study done 2 or 3 years from now, will most humans at that point then say, I don't care. I don't care if it's AI or not. I don't know. They might. So I think right now, where do I see it in the next couple of years? I think, I hate to say like stay present, stay connected, and not try to see what's coming. But I think that I'd like to think that the industry will continue to get smarter on identifying, much like Spotify did a few days ago, identifying what's AI and what's human. People can make the choice themselves if they want to support a real human being or if they just don't care and they just, they like what they're listening to and they don't care if it's AI generated or not. I think that's going to keep happening. But, arts and music have been around forever. And one would hope that that will prevail and that people are still going to want to experience live music and have real human experiences. So I think that the biggest advice that I would give an up and coming artist is maybe if you want to familiarize yourself with AI tools that are available to you, that's up to you. I'm not going to sit here and say like, no, just, like the Napster thing, right? Or like the Blockbuster example, not seeing Netflix coming. And like, yes, there's an evolution to be had, getting yourself around it on what you feel comfortable utilizing and what you don't, and how you want to make it work for you. If there's ways to save time and money that work for you and you're morally okay with it, then what am I going to say? But I think no matter how you utilize the AI, it's that connection to fan, that human connection. If we lose that, then I don't think anybody survives in this industry if they don't have real human connection and get out there and make live music and experiences with fans. Because I don't necessarily see people buying a whole bunch of merch for a faceless artist, for somebody that they can't go see live, that they can't meet, that they'll never understand is real or not. The downside is unless we get a lot better at identifying AI content is, right now we're in a weird time where I think there's plenty of videos of humans that are actually AI characters and people don't know any better. So they
Yeah.
think that they're buying a physical product from a human, but it's an actual AI bought and they don't know because it hasn't been identified as such.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, Crystal, I want to thank you for being on our podcast.
Of
You
course.
you you kind of knocked it out of the park here. I was totally blown away, especially your last few remarks there about getting if you're a starting artist or you're trying to get your launch pad going. I think a lot of those perspectives are key and critical. I want to wish you best of success on this venture. I think everybody out there needs to be aware of who you are, what you do. Mind Our Music is the name. Want you to, much success. Hopefully we'll have you back on the show at some point in time.
I would love to. Thank you.
And again, everybody like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's podcast. And again, Crystal Gans, mind our music. Hopefully, much success, and we'll hear some of your new artists in the next few months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have yourself a great day.
You too.